Well, as usual, I hope I give you a different twist on things. And, I noticed a lot of hoopla in the YouTube airwaves and Facebook, whatever. Facebook is lame. I'll tell you what, about the Hill the Beast versus the Trumpster. And right now, it looks like the major media is kind of giving up on the Hill the Beast. I know not all the way, but it's kind of funny. I'm mentioning in this here because it looks like the Trumpster is going to get it. Now, I've been hearing some stuff from Larry Nichols, and I'm putting this out because I'm talking about this election garbage because I think it's going to affect the economy greatly. And what I think is going to happen when Trump gets in and make America great, how they're going to pull out the strings and make America look as bad as possible. They're going to give you the real unemployment numbers. The stock market's going to crash and all this other garbage, but it's going to probably be good for us, gold and silver. And that is because the inverse relationship between gold and the stock market is going to come into bearing at that time when the markets start coming down. In other words, the flight to safety, where the hell is it going to be? It's not going to be the bond market. The bond market's already in a melt up. There's been a lot of analysis on that the bond market already is in a melt up, and that interest rates on long term bonds will be going north of 4%, which will freaking take up a large part of the government budget. And if you look at that Deagle.com site, Deagel, not GLE, where it has the population forecast for the United States 2025, they got it 64.9 million. I'm like, holy smokes, I don't know about that deal, but anyway, old chopper girl here on the bike doesn't really give a shit because you only need two wheels, right? That's what you say. Especially when you're living down south and it's warm. Huh. Because the mini ice age is coming to the northeast in the future. Ha ha. I can tell you one thing, man. That's one reason I don't know if I'm going to go up to Tennessee full time, man. I don't think I would appreciate this snow too much, except for sometimes. But anyway, um, a lot of things have been known in the past, and you got to look at the wisdom of the ancients. I'm going to actually display an old chart you've probably seen in a long time about the 650-year price of silver. But there's been a lot of things that have been known for a long time, and we've been in this experiment with fiat debt-based currency not that long, and it looks like everything's just getting ready to blow up. The Keynesian model of economy is just gone. It's bullshit. This guy, the Keynesian model of models that all economies in the West are built upon, it's total fluff. I mean, the guy was a freak, sexually and everything else. It's pretty much he made a Frankenstein economic model. And when you're living through this stuff on a daily basis or even on a yearly basis, you're not noticing that. Hey, this whole thing's gonna freaking short circuit because it's been running for quite some time, and a lot of people say don't worry about it, and you really shouldn't worry about it as long as you're prepared. And really, that's my whole message. If you're prepared, don't be a worrywart. Don't be a freaking doom and gloomer. But then don't be an ostrich. That's my whole message, right? Don't be an ostrich. Don't be an idiot. And I'm not playing God. I mean, I can predict things. Science can predict things, and actually, science is a lot of science behind economic predictions too. Like old girl here says, right? It's a matter of those who actually really produce and make stuff are the real economy. That's something else I've been talking about before. If you had none of the numbers measured in, say, household industries or cottage industries, and we were trading amongst each other, boy, the government could be saying, oh, the GDP went to nothing, but say we're all making things on our own and doing things on our own. Say we had Alaskan chainsaw mills, we're making our own lumber, we're even producing our own gasoline from, say, hemp, industrial hemp, and we're growing our own food, and we're producing our own electrical power through solar panels, and we had ways to get water through the ground through wells, and solar powered pumps, and we were pretty much self sufficient. The government saying, "Oh, the GDP is zero, but we'd have everything." So don't always look at the numbers, but be a MacGyver. That's another thing. That's one of the. That's kind of like I put out that last video about the simple manual can opener. I was surprised. I was thinking that was going to be a real groaner. He's like, yeah, manual can opener, and um, I was surprised the number of people didn't know what the hell that was. I was like, whoa, baby. I was like, man, maybe I should have put that out. But, that tells me, not to criticize the millennial generation because every generation is really the same. It's just that, the millennial generation hasn't been taught a lot of the freaking MacGyver stuff, and that's a problem, man. So you got to learn the MacGyver stuff, not just have silver because the MacGyver stuff is going to really save your ass more than anything. That's why I have kind of a hodgepodge channel of MacGyver stuff, how to do stuff, and silver and health. And health is number one, man. If you don't feel good and you feel like shit, but silver is also the damn thing that can actually improve your health. I want to mention it again in this video. I know I mentioned it several times. It was Robert Otto Becker, MD, when he's experimenting with regrowing limbs on rats, which you think that can't happen. He was using microelectricity and a silver positive electrode with microcurrents to regrow their limbs on rats. What was going on here, he thought it was the microelectricity was doing it. It was actually the silver ions were producing stem cells. So actually, if you take a little bit of ionic silver every day, I mean, it's not going to freaking make you regrow limbs if you freaking had a severe accident, but it helps your body produce a little more stem cells, which is very helpful besides knocking out microbes. A lot of people don't know that. People talk about colloidal silver and ionic silver. Oh, it knocks out all the microbes in the world, 650 known main pathogens that are known throughout the world, all known pathogens. And it's like, oh, it's really good to take, fine. But a lot of people don't know it can actually help your body produce stem cells. Ha! It was proven by Dr. Robert Otto Becker back in the 70s. Kind of like a pretty, it's fairly secret, man, but it was done by a medical doctor, not a PhD doctor. So, anyway, he didn't realize that it was producing stem cells. That's another reason everybody ought to have at least a couple ounces of silver. Now, you can even produce that stuff with 999 versus 49s, but as long as your distilled water is of the utmost quality. So that's really the problem, mainly. And, going back to some of the ancient history, the Mayans even knew about, the planets revolving around the sun and our planet revolving around the sun way before Copernicus was around. And you know what happened to Copernicus? He was burned at the stake. But the reason I'm bringing that up, it's almost like we got this kind of like fake religion out there, and I'm not talking about, formal religion like you're thinking, but the type of religion we got out there is like the stuff promoted by the major media, about, what the Internet of Things is going to be the new freaking thing of the future, and, how the numbers look on the markets, the S&P, the Dow, what their unemployment rates are and stuff, the GDP. Basically, that type of stuff is, I call it almost like a religion because you know what's going on. They're all fixed numbers. They're making things, they're making a false reality. And that's almost like what happened with the old time religion when they said the earth was the center of the universe. They said, they made their false reality, but the reality catches up with their false reality. And it just knocks it away, almost like a tide knocking away like a paper mache house on the beach. And I think that's really what's going to be happening. But most people in the silver world are basically like this old girl over here riding out in the desert. We're kind of like the lone wolves of society. We don't really freaking go with the crowd. If you look at most people out there, maybe if you talk to them, they might agree with you or give you a nod, but they don't do it. They don't actually, like, in other words, we're walking the walk. We're not just talking the talk, right? We're actually doing it. We're actually freaking, I'm not hoarding. I haven't been hoarding silver, but I've been hoarding other things. Like, I don't concentrate solely on silver, but, it's a matter of prepping. Silver is a matter of prepping. That's really what it is. That's why I'm not going to be playing suit and tie bullshit over here on this channel either, because, when you're a prepper, you're not a suit and tie wearer. That's what the hell it is. I mean, I used to be. Crap, I used to be wearing suits and ties all the way back when I was 14 years old. I'm sick of that stuff. But, it's a matter of, staying true to the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation has always remained the same. Not only day to day, but year to year, and decade to decade, but century to century. Really, what do you need? You need like food, clothing, and shelter. And silver can buy those things, but in reality, you should be building upon what you really need most first, which is food, clothing, and shelter, beans, bacon, and bullets, fuel, fire, power, and, and food. Food. Food's been in there a couple times. Actually, that's a biggie, man. I think that's going to be one of your biggest problems in the future too. Is where we're going to get a hurt locker on the economy. I know I've been putting out this before. Somebody was saying, "Are you playing God?" I said, "No, I'm not playing God. I mean, just because we could predict, you know, when there's going to be a lunar eclipse, that doesn't mean we're God. It's science." But I says, we're coming up to the mini ice age, which is mainly going to be affecting the Northeast and the Midwest, and also the European breadbasket and the breadbasket that's in Russia. It's going to affect our production and our food and crop production, the same thing. But that's going to raise the price of food and give less disposable income in the pockets of ordinary citizens, which will mean that there'll be less spending, discretionary spending. So you know how that works. That means, like, it puts a hurt locker on the economy that way. But, like, that in conjunction with the melt up in the bonds and the interest rates going up to 4%, and that also taking up a larger slice of the government pie of their budget to maintain the interest on the debt. In other words, we got a large slice now, but if it goes up to 4% on the long-term bonds, which it will, it's going to mean there's going to be that many less government services around. That's actually partly why Deagle.com, which is DEAGEL, a non-profit military site, has been predicting a mass decrease in the population of the United States. A lot of it due to exodus, and people kind of exit to places that where they're going to have other debt problems, like in Europe and UK and Japan and everything else. So now this is the 650-year price of silver. If you notice, I'm not going to give you a round. Silver theoretically should be hundreds of dollars an ounce right now. And just give you a real ballpark figure. Say silver went up to, let's say gold went up to $2,500. Is that unreasonable? Nah. I mean, considering it was over 1950 before, is it unreasonable that gold could go to 2,500? Not, maybe not next year, but maybe in a couple years. Maybe, maybe even next year. Maybe 2017 sometime. But say it went up to $2,500. Say the silver gold ratio went to 20 to 1. That would put silver at 125. If gold went up to $5,000, is that crazy? Maybe not. But 20 to 1, only a 20 to 1 ratio with silver, that would put it at $250. It's not that unreasonable. Now, it could actually go a lot higher than that. I mean, gold can go to freaking $5,000 to $8,000. The silver gold ratio could go to, I don't know, 10 to 1, 15 to 1. It could go from anywhere from $250 to $800 an ounce. And, traditionally, if you go all the way back in today's dollars, before we went into this Keynesian, at the end of this graph here, that's all this Keynesian economies with the fiat debt-based currencies. And that's where the price of silver has been depressed. So, but I should just look at it this way. I mean, what's going to bring up the demand of silver? Just common sense medical uses that people can use in the home. They can use it even if they don't even drink the stuff or whatever, and say, "Oh, you're going to turn blue." Say you just use it for disinfecting, your floors, your kitchen, whatever the hell it is, like that, and you make colloidal silver for that, right? But actually taking a tiny bit of silver every day in trace amounts, ionic and colloidal, is very good for your health. Actually, it is an essential trace element. So, people won't believe that or not. But even if you don't do that, as far as like even these antibacterial things that they have out there in products, if everybody just made some colloidal silver just for disinfecting, God, I mean, you just keep a couple ounces in your home just for that. That would immediately freaking drive up the price of silver a great deal, because most people don't even have 1 ounce. But nobody's thinking like that. Oh, they're not going to buy an ounce of silver for freaking $20. Oh no, they're going to go spend a gazillion dollars on all these products that are antibacterial, antimicrobial, and all this type of stuff, and they could be making all the freaking best antimicrobial and antibacterial water there is, which would cleanse and destroy all types of freaking issues. In other words, right? So I don't know. So anyway, But it's just like we have the politically correct police out there all the time, which is, they keep this message away from people. It's almost like, well, it's almost like this. What the hell was even Winston Churchill says? Maybe once or twice in her life, a person or a man or a woman stumbles upon the truth and falls down. They stumble upon the truth, right? They just trip over the truth, right? And there's the answer right there, lying at their feet. What do? They quickly get up, dust themselves off, and run in the other direction. Sometimes you got to slow down to actually freaking see the actual truth. And the truth is, everybody should have a little bit of silver, even just for antimicrobial medicinal purposes. But nobody does. Nobody does. They'll blow it on a pack of cigarettes or a six-pack of beer or some shit like that, or a freaking Netflix movie. I don't know why, but what the hell. So, that's just a reality situation. It's called brainwashing and marketing. There's not enough of us silver people out there marketing this stuff. Now, is it like, am I trying to freaking push my investment up? No, because it's actually going to go up by itself. I already know that. It's just a matter of time. Just sitting on it, waiting on it. And, also, like I said, I also realized that, in a practical world, you got to realize that, you can't eat silver. Silver's not going to clothe you. Silver's not going to be something that's going to put a roof over your head. Theoretically, yes, because you can exchange it for other materials, but, you're better off, diversifying in putting a hedge in a lot of different ways, because you want to really be independent. Independent. And like when I was hinting at in the beginning, if everybody was like a MacGyver in their own little cottage and had multiple functions where they can do like their own cottage industry in their houses and stuff, they can weld, they can make their own lumber with Alaskan chainsaw mills, they can grow their own food. I don't know, they know how to repair everything, they know how to do plumbing, they know how to do engine work, whatever the hell it is. They know how to make things, they know how to, just do things, right? If that's the case, if the GDP goes down to nothing, and you say, all these people are unemployed, but everybody's pretty much self-sufficient, it's not going to matter. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. But people that are depending upon FEMA, you can go to the camps and you can go to the coffins. Not me. I ain't going there, man. Anyway. But this is another thing, too. I put this chart up here. This is an old chart from the 70s about gold. And, gold, silver's going to be crazier than this, but gold was getting really crazy in the 70s. It looked like it hit a height in 74, late 74. And, it was erratic. It was an erratic upward movement. So that's going to be one of the damn things with, people looking at this price every day, even when because I think it has been moving up, and it's just, we're just in the beginning of the bull market again for silver and gold. It's not going to be going up like, nice and smooth and steady. That's the problem. So, don't get tunnel vision on looking at the price every day. But if it goes hyperbolic, that's going to be one thing to decide. When it's hyperbolic. Is hyperbolic back here? So this is hyperbolic, and if you sold it back here, you'd have waited a few years. You would have went way the hell up here. But then, if you would have waited another year after this, it would have crashed. And, the thing is, when it gets, you're going to have to be looking at a lot on that silver-gold ratio. That's going to tell you when it's getting too hot and heavy, and also the stock market to gold ratio. That's another thing that's going to be telling you it's getting too hot and heavy. But, I'll probably wind up selling some of it too early because, I'm really kind of looking at the real estate deal, but, that's another thing that's a very, very good investment. Land, especially raw land that doesn't require maintenance, and land that's raw land that's also has a very low tax rate. There's no maintenance, and the taxes are like dirt cheap, or practically like, say, maybe a quarter of the assessment value. That's a good investment too. So whatever because I know people say, what are you gonna do? You gonna trade fiat? No, you know what? You always trade fiat when you make the sale, and because we're gonna have a medium of exchange in this country. If we don't have a medium of exchange, we're going to have a medium of exchange, one way or the other. Yes, I know the medium of exchange can get all screwed up, and that's maybe when silver might be $500 an ounce. I don't know, whatever that, you know what I mean. But it's still, still gonna have the U.S. dollars as their medium of exchange. So when you make this exchange, it's just like anything. I said this so many times, and I'm like, I don't think people get it because I understand how companies work. I mean, somebody might have some, like, give an example. Somebody might have some land for 25 years or more, and they bought it at, I don't know, $500,000, and then it's worth $15 million, and then they sell it. Okay, so they get this huge capital gain of $14.5 million, and then they got cash. You think that company's going to leave all that money in cash? No, they don't. They don't ever leave their money in cash. No, they reinvest it in other capital items to try to get a return on their investment again, right? That's what you do. What's the next move after silver? The next move might be partly raw land. It might be something else. But that's the thing. You know, I know, like, sometimes I saw, like, some of the people that were criticizing the silver people way back when. They were saying, if somebody sold silver, what would they do? They'd buy more silver with it. That's all they would do. And in a lot of ways, that was a legitimate criticism because it's not like the be all end all investment of anything. It's like, I think it's going to be probably an investment century of the freaking millennia, 1,000 years, because of, like, that last chart I showed, because this Keynesian economy, global economy, debt-based economy is going to blow up, and the price of silver can go to astronomical. But at one point in time, it's going to come back down when things steady out. I mean, yeah, it might come down to something a hell of a lot higher than it is today, but you really want to catch it at the melt up, and obviously not everybody's gonna be able to do that. That's not going to happen unless you're extremely lucky. In other words, for the few winners, there's going to be a lot of losers, right? Because, see, in other words, when the melt up happens, and say you're lucky to sell it right at the exact pinnacle of the melt up, the people that are be buying are the ones that say buy silver at any cost because it's going to the moon, and it's like fiat is going to absolutely nothing. Well, you know what? At one point in time, the fiat is going to actually reflect, have a base of real net worth in commodities and agricultural items and staples and things like that. And these people that are going to say all paper money is going to be garbage or all electronic money is garbage, if it actually has a real base behind it, it's not going to be garbage. Things will settle down at one point in time. My problem is I'll probably sell it too soon, but as long as I go into something that's solid, that's a growing asset, it's not going to be that bad, But I think it's still got a lot more room to run, obviously, because the bull market has just been starting. It's just started again, really, in the last year. I mean, yeah, I'm saying just started. I'm not saying the last week. It's actually 2016. And also, as your advertising note for this video, do you realize if Democrats stop shooting people, gun violence would drop by 90%? This message brought to you by the NRA, JFPO, and the Gun Owners of America. So anyway, yeah, so you know how that works. And Mr. Goldie the Cat, get over here quick bumping on me. This guy is a freaking yo-yo, man. He's like, these cats come over here just wait. He's Mr. freaking playful. Anyway, comes over here right when I'm doing a video. So anyway, everything is going to be all right, but everything's going to be all right predicated on you preparing. In other words, I'm not a doom and gloomer. You see, some people accuse me of that. Do I really sound like a doom and gloomer? Not really. Sometimes I do, because the one thing I'm a little worried about is, I think they're trying to push Putin into World War III. I don't like that shit. But otherwise, if that doesn't happen, I think they are trying to push Putin into World War III. And, if something happens with Trump, and I think Trump is the guy that's is gonna lead us away from that situation. But if something happens with him, and we got some other person, maybe not Hillary, but somebody kind of like the establishment ilk again, everything's not going to be all right, even if you prepare. Maybe, I don't know. I hope I hope that situation doesn't come about, but it might be pretty damn bad. But that's the thing where maybe I am a doom and gloomer in that way, but everybody's got that thought. And you know what? I know they've been predicting about this, um, nuclear freaking war crap since the nuclear bomb has been developed, and they've been talking about war with Russia since I don't know, 1950. So far, it hasn't happened, but I do know, like, recently they've been talking that U.S. readiness has been the worst it's ever been. I know Mr. Obama doesn't even go to the briefings. He watches sports for like 7, 8 hours a day or something like that. He's a real lame duck yo-yo. And I mean, if Trumpster gets in there, I think everything is going to be fine. But there's a lot of powerful forces trying to make sure he isn't. Well, let me put it this way: if Trumpster gets in there, I know they're going to try to make the economy look as bad as possible. They're going to bring down the markets and all this kind of crap like that. But you know, yeah, I mean that's one thing. It's going to be a reflection of the numbers. Going to look really bad. But if people, it's we're probably going to build up a lot stronger economy base though while he's in. And the problem is a lot of people just aren't educated enough because I realize Trumpster is almost like the Andrew Jackson of old. When Andrew Jackson was going against Biddle in the central bank. Well, people back then in the 1800s knew what the deal was. The central bank was trying to create a depression and, wreck the economy, saying, oh, yeah, you need a central bank. But the people knew, and they stuck to their guns, and they backed Andrew Jackson. So, I mean, they are going to probably try to make the economy look as bad as possible, but actually, in reality, the situation, the economy is pretty bad, man. I mean, in reality, even though they're saying we got all these rosy numbers on the stock markets and the equities and things like that, and they're saying, oh, the unemployment rate's so low, which is only the people that are actively seeking employment, right? A lot of people that gave up on employment, if they looked at the actual workforce that was available, the unemployment rate is something like 22 to 24%. It's something horrible, like in the Great Depression. And also, wages are very much depressed in the United States. So, they'll probably bring those numbers out when if Trump makes it in there and try to make things look as bad as possible. I just hope people are educated enough to realize that the major media is playing games with you, that nothing really has changed, and actually Trump's going to be building up the actual industrial base in this country, which is really what counts. Just like the same principle as why does silver count versus electronic and fiat money that's debt-based. Now, electronic and fiat money is fine if it's based with real assets, okay? There's nothing wrong with, you can't walk around with, lumps of silver in your pocket all the time. I mean, sometimes you got to trade with, it's easier to use paper or electronic, right? But I'm talking about debt-based fiat currency. That's bad. That's bad. But Trumpster is actually going to make the economy stronger by attempting to bring back jobs in the United States. But, the other thing is we could actually bring back our jobs by just going cottage industry and learning some more Guyver stuff. Like opening up a can of chili with a freaking real knife that has a manual manual opener on it, like I showed in my last video. In other words, you got to kind of, you could be your own little industrial complex in a lot of ways, too. That's another thing. Off the books, because, well, it's not off the books. Really what it is the government doesn't go around measuring the financial benefits of you fixing or maintaining things yourself or creating things yourself, as long as you're not selling to other people, and that's something whereby if there's a lot of major problems in the economy and jobs are disappearing or whatever, something happens, if everybody's sort of a MacGyver, you'll be fine. And I think that's one of the most important things to remember. The one thing, like I said, the one thing that's really, if there's a real doom and gloom, is if there's a nuclear exchange. I've been kind of wondering about that deal because I noticed they're trying to push Russia pretty hard with, pushing up their missiles, and NATO's pushing up their missiles into Ukraine within striking distance of Moscow and all this kind of stuff. Man, they're freaking playing games left and right. Like, we're basically one mistake away from a nuclear war, man. And, that's a possibility. I don't like dwelling on a possibility, but I have that possibility in the back of my head. That is where I'd say there's real doom and gloom. But otherwise, we're just going to have this reset in the economy due to the failed policies of Keynesian debt-based economics that the government's been using. And the price of silver and gold is going to explode. But you don't want to freaking just depend only on that. You want to depend on a number of things, period. And like ancient wisdom, a lot of times is some of the best wisdom going. I know I went long in this video already, but a lot of times, even in health, there's a lot of things out there that are ancient wisdom. And like mentioned before, my cousin had cancer. She had cancer. She lives up in Maine, and it was supposed to be terminal 4 years ago. And guess what? She went to the Penobscot Indians up in Maine, and she used their herbal medicines and herbal teas. And Shaga tea was one of them, and Shaga root, Shaga bark, mushroom. It's like a kind of like a mushroom bark, or whatever the hell it is, and the teas. And she's fine. She's supposed to have been dead 4 years ago with terminal cancer. And the Indians didn't really get paid no money for that. I mean, hardly nothing. Penobscot Indians. And, the conventional people would tell you, oh, that's all garbage. But that's just kind of like how a lot of things are, right? Dandelion root, stuff like that. The Indians use that. The dandelion, pretty much, you can eat the leaves. You can eat the root. It's a powerful medicine. People don't tell you this stuff. Actually, I got videos like galore on health. If you look at the health and beauty playlist I got out there, it's a lot of stuff on there, man. I don't even know what the hell to put out anymore because I think I covered just about every subject on the planet. But, um, that's something that's not measured. So, in other words, say you got, $3 million worth of freaking health insurance you could just blow on the best doctors. That doesn't mean you're going to live. Like my cousin would have never survived cancer if she had $10 million worth of freaking cancer operations. She would have been dead. She used the Indian herbal teas. So, I mean, you can't put a price on a lot of things because I should actually live even longer because I'll tell you something else. It's actually the Hildebeest problem. Hildebeest is surrounded by the big bucks bullshit. And one of the problems with that is, well, this is something I always saw when I was working for people that had a lot of money. And this is another reason they respected me a lot because I was like, I'd open my mouth, I'd get in trouble. Man, I was like one of those people like that. I'd tell them what the hell was up, man. Um, you know, yeah, that was me, man. I'm stupid. I tell them what the hell was up, man. That's why I get in trouble sometimes. I'm freaking bad news with that shit. But the Hildebeest actually is surrounded by the big bucks bullshit. Now, I'd smack her upside the head a million times and whip her if I haven't gotten contact with her because she's an asshole. But I'd probably heal her too, and I could. I can make her 100% again with all the magic shit I know. And the bastards that are around her, they're the big bucks bullshit. They just give her inoculations and all this other shit with pharmaceutical medicines. She's gonna croak, man. You know what I mean? She can have all the money in the world. But the problem is when you got all the money in the world, you're surrounded by the big bucks bullshit. Always call them the BBB, the big bucks bullshit. Because that's the type of people that are like the barnacles on you to ship with all the money. That's why a lot of the people with the money, they like me, man. Because I point out what these guys were, a pile of bullshit, and they get mad at me, man. How many times I almost got fired by these people? A million times. But I still outlasted everybody. Outlasted everybody. That's the kind of person I am. See what I mean? I outlast them. It's a slow, methodical thing. And a lot of times people can't see what the problem is. And a lot of these rich people, they're not invested in freaking silver. They don't know. They might have a little bit of it, if they have any. And I'm not saying their shit's going to go up smoke because a lot of these people are invested in real estate. Actually, a lot of the most wealthy people in the world are invested in real estate. And real estate is a winner even in almost any situation if you know what you're doing. Ask Trump, right? You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people are invested in other things too, like manufacturing that of products that people need or agriculture. But, that being said, is like a lot of times people don't know some of the basic wisdoms and truths that are the most simple, that are actually ancient wisdoms, and they miss out on it because they're surrounded by the big bucks bullshit. And see, this kid, that's one reason I'm sticking with his YouTube. A lot of people think, oh, this guy's just trying to make a lot of money on YouTube. I'm not making a lot of money on YouTube. I could be making a lot more money doing accounting. But let me tell you this. I'm doing this because actually, in a lot of ways, it helped me to discover some shit I would have thought I would have never figured out because I didn't have the time to freaking do the research if I was doing the accounting. So it helped me out that way. That's really where it's enriching me more, too. And what I enrich myself with, I enrich you with. So that's right from the heart, man. So I'm true blue. And I know they're trying to freaking um, corner and stifle and, marginalize all the smaller producers. I know the games that are going on. I mean, it's not just Facebook, it's all of them. I know it's Google, YouTube, all of them. They're trying to make the internet like a pay per channel, freaking big mainstream, like cable TV bullshit. That's why I'm sticking with it, man. I'm over here to freaking fight. I'm here to fight the power all the way. And I'm waiting on, I'm going to just give you a final message. I know it used to be TrueTube with something else, because I know some of the stuff I put on here is too politically hot and heavy for YouTube. Not this video. This will be too easy. This will be fine with them. But I know some of the stuff I put out there is too politically hot and heavy for YouTube, and I can't really put it out on there. I'm waiting for, it used to be TrueTube. They went out of business or something. They became BitTube. I'm waiting to get signed up on BitTube. And right now they're not taking any subscribers. And, that's going to be basically just me doing this shit for nothing. And I'll probably put some of the really wild, heavy-duty political shit out on there that I can't put out on YouTube because they'll say, because if you upload videos that aren't monetized or friendly, they don't like that shit, man. You know what I mean? So I'll be doing that kind of shit on this BitTube or something like that if I could ever get on there. I'm waiting. So drop you a few dimes on that sucker. But, as far as like on YouTube, I'm going to stick with the MacGyver shit and keep it more very lighthearted and stuff. So, but just, again, the basics never fail, man. Two tits and an ass, right? The basics never fail. Stick with silver. It's just going to work, Uh, it's just going to work out for you. But don't get tunnel vision on your on your investments. That's one thing. Like, I just got to repeat it again. People get hell bent on this thing. What are you going to do? Take fiat? Well, at the point of time to sell, you do take fiat. Eventually you're going to sell the damn silver, okay? Some people say you're going to make it a family heirloom for the next 25 generations or some shit. Well, if you want to do that, fine. But, you'd probably be better off doing real estate, to tell you the truth, in my opinion. In my opinion. But do whatever you want. So that's just my opinion. I'm sticking to it. So over and out, and have a nice day. And we try to get some more practical stuff, like open up cans of chili with manual can opener for you millennials out there, because boy, you guys need a lot of help. I can tell you that right now.